Today's lab is the chemical reactions of copper and percent yield. So the first thing that we're doing here is we're going to measure out about 0.5 grams of the copper turning. So I have those here. I also have a pair of scissors just in case I need them. Make sure that you record the exact mass of these copper turnings in the appropriate place on your report sheet. Okay, so now that I have my balance on and zeroed out, I'm going to put a weigh dish on there and then zero out that mass. So here we're looking to get about 0.5 grams of our copper. Okay, so we have 0.550 grams of copper. Make sure that you record that in your report sheet. So now we're going to take this copper to the hood. We're going to put it into that beaker and start with the first reaction between copper and nitric acid. Right now I have my copper in my beaker. I'm doing this in a fume hood. All of the reactions today will be conducted in the fume hood. I'm going to measure out between 4 and 5 milliliters of nitric acid. This is concentrated acid. So I have gloves on, I'm working in the hood. I also have goggles on to keep myself safe. Remember that when you are measuring volumes, you always want to use a graduated cylinder. So here I'm just going to measure somewhere between 4 and 5 milliliters. There's not an exact volume to measure this time. Okay, I have about 5 milliliters of concentrated nitric acid in my graduated cylinder. So what we're doing in the procedure is we're going to add this nitric acid to the copper, and then you're going to observe what happens. So the book is a little bit misleading where it tells you to observe the observations after you've added water. You want to make sure that you observe your observations for this particular reaction. After this reaction subsides, we're going to add water to that and just look at the solution. There is no reaction when we add that water. There is a reaction when we add this nitric acid. You also want to do this in a fume hood because there is going to be a gas released and you do not want to breathe that gas in. Once this reaction subsides a little bit, I'm going to go in there and swirl it, just kind of stir it up to make sure that reaction does go to completion. I'm also going to see if I can get more of that, all that nitric acid into the beaker. Okay, so this is the reaction that you want to make observations about. So I can feel that my beaker has gotten warm, so this is an exothermic reaction. And then you also want to see, you want to make those observations on what you saw when I did mix that nitric acid with the copper. So now we're looking to get a blue solution, and we want that blue solution to match that blue that's on this hot plate. So this is the color that we're looking for before we move on to the next step. So right now our solution is kind of greenish tealish because it still has that brown gas in it. So I'm going to take it inside the hood and I'm going to just swirl it until that reaction is completely done and that solution is blue, like this blue on the hot plate here. Then I'll be ready to move on in the procedure where you're adding water. So as I'm doing this, you can see that gas is still coming out of that reaction. So it's kind of brown, that brownish gas is still coming out of that beaker. Okay, so I think our reaction has subsided now. So now this blue and the blue on the hot plate do match up a little bit better. So we're ready to add the water. So we're going to add 100 milliliters of distilled water. I'm going to measure that out with a graduated cylinder and a bottle of distilled water. So I have a bottle of distilled water and I also have a graduated cylinder. So I'm going to go ahead and measure out my distilled water into it. Then we'll add it to the reaction. Remember, there is no reaction here. We're just diluting the solution. You are supposed to make observations for the reaction between copper and nitric acid.